Welcome, truth seekers. Today, we're jumping straight into the truth seeker's journey, asking the right questions. We are going on a bit of an investigation to figure out how the exact way we ask a question literally changes everything about the answers we get. Let's get into it. There's this great quote from Proverbs 15:14 that says, "The discerning heart seeks knowledge." You know, it's a really great reminder that just being curious about how the world works, that's a noble quest. Whether you're standing in a science lab holding a beaker or just navigating through everyday life, the quality of your questions absolutely determines the quality of your discoveries.
But here is where we hit a pretty fascinating roadblock. Think about this. Which dessert tastes best? Is it chocolate cake? Apple pie? Maybe you have a highly controversial opinion and you just love oatmeal raisin cookies. We could argue about this all day long, but does science actually have the tools to declare a definitive winner? Think about it. If we put a slice of cake under a microscope, is the microscope going to tell us it's the absolute best? No way.
Okay, let's dive into this toolkit we're building today. You're going to learn how to identify measurable variables, how to rewrite vague questions, and most importantly, how to separate hard measurement from personal opinion. Section 1. 2 paths of inquiry, science and opinion. Let's see what that really means. So think of the vast, infinite world of questions as being divided into 2 distinct buckets. Knowing which bucket your question belongs in is going to save you a tremendous amount of time and frustration. The first bucket is the testable question. This is a question you can answer by actually collecting and measuring evidence. For a question to be testable, it strictly relies on things we can physically measure in the real world. Think weight, temperature, time, or distance. If you can't measure it with a tool or make a clear observation, well, it's just not a testable question. Then we have our second bucket, the non-testable question. These are questions about personal opinion, ethics, or values. And you guessed it, they cannot be answered using scientific methods alone. But listen closely here. Non-testable questions are still incredibly important. I mean, questions about what is right or wrong or what pizza topping is supreme, those matter deeply to us. They just require different tools, like our faith, our values, and our personal experiences, rather than, say, a science lab. Section 2, the secret tool, variables. This is the engine that makes it all work. If a testable question is a car driving toward the truth, variables are the engine that makes the whole thing run. You literally cannot have a scientific question without them. A measurable variable is anything in an experiment that you can change or measure. It's the physical, trackable element of your investigation. It might be the amount of sunlight a plant gets, the temperature of a glass of water, or the number of days you run an experiment. Bottom line, if you can count it, weigh it, or time it, you found your variable. So the crucial point is really clear in an example like this one. How does sugar content affect the time it takes yeast to produce gas? We can easily measure sugar content in grams, right? And we can measure time in minutes or seconds. Because both of those elements are measurable variables, this is a perfectly testable question. Section 3, the transformation lab, before and after. Welcome to the lab, where we're going to upgrade some pretty vague questions into solid scientific ones. Okay, let's take the original vague idea. Is bottled water healthier than tap water? We hear this one all the time. But healthier is a super vague, non-testable opinion. Now, if we upgrade it to, what is the difference in bacterial count between bottled and tap water, we completely change the game. We swapped out a vague word for a highly specific, measurable variable, bacterial count, measured in CFUs per milliliter. Boom, now we can actually test it. Remember our dessert debate from earlier? Asking which fruit tastes better relies purely on opinion. You might be a huge fan of apples. Someone else might fiercely defend oranges. Science can't solve that. But if we transform that into how does sugar content compare between apples and oranges, we turn the opinion of taste into hard facts. Sugar content is a variable we can measure perfectly in grams per 100 grams. The exact same thing happens with plants. Asking if plants grow better with music is just too vague. I mean, better could mean greener, bushier, or taller. Instead, we can ask, how does exposure to classical music affect average plant height after 21 days compared to no music? And this brilliantly illustrates how adding specific time frames, like 21 days, and a control group makes the plant question perfectly testable. Section 4, your turn putting it into practice. Now it's time for you to take out that mental toolkit we just built. All right, here is your challenge to prove your new mastery of variables. First, practice converting that bottled versus tap water question yourself. Second, identify your manipulated and measured variables. Third, explain in your own words why which dessert tastes best completely fails the science test. Fourth, I want you to write a simple method testing screen brightness against battery life. And finally, describe the control group you'd use for that phone battery experiment. It's a fantastic way to really put your scientific methods to the test.
Section 5. The bigger picture, education and morality. Let's zoom out from the science lab for a minute and look at the why behind all this learning.
The philosophy here, drawn from the Heroesmartacademy, is very direct. Education without morality will hurt. The core idea they present is that simply being smart, knowing how to measure variables, or being highly educated won't actually help much if it leads to bad choices. If we have brilliant scientific minds but completely lack a moral compass, those choices can ultimately hurt ourselves and the people around us. And this connects right back to the tools we use for non-testable questions, like our values and faith. This perspective from Romans chapter 8 points out that peace of mind comes to those who keep their mind spiritual. It's meant to illustrate the concept that when you pair a sharp, highly educated scientific mind with a spiritually grounded, discerning heart, the result is true peace and positive decision-making.
Which leaves us with a final, absolutely vital question. How will you use your education and morality together to make choices that bring peace? As you go forward, definitely use your sharp scientific minds to test variables and uncover hard facts, but always rely on your discerning heart to guide your values in your actions. Merge the two, and you'll be unstoppable. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep asking the right questions.